Recording. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Hello and welcome to UWS Friday Sports Show. Here are your headlines. Alex McLeish has been announced as the Scotland manager today. The Scottish FA's search for a new manager appears to be over, as the 59-year-old has returned to the managerial role that he left 11 years ago. McLeish has been quoted as being extremely proud of returning to the job. Gregor Hines and Chris McMillan will be discussing the matter more later on in the show. Celtic have given themselves a great chance of progressing to the Europa League round of 16 after a stunning Cal McGregor goal gave Brendan Rodgers' side a 1-0 advantage to take to St Petersburg next week. English side Arsenal beat Östersunds 3-0 away in Sweden last night. Serie A table toppers Napoli were defeated by RB Leipzig 3-1 in Naples. This weekend sees a full return to Scottish Premiership action. Televised Saturday kickoff will see bottom side Ross County take on Hearts, before Aberdeen will attempt to close the gap on leaders Celtic. The Dons travel to Easter Road as they face Hibernian. Celtic host St Johnstone on Sunday, with the Rangers travelling to Hamilton later on the same day. Meanwhile, two championship sides will be participating in the Challenge Cup. Dumbarton will travel to Wales to play TNS on Saturday, with Inverness hosting Crusaders of Northern Ireland the next day. The FA Cup fifth round takes place this weekend, with Chelsea hosting Hull this evening, while runaway Premier League leaders Manchester City travel to Wigan. Elsewhere, Manchester United face Huddersfield at the John Smith Stadium, a venue where they were defeated earlier on in the season. George Groves will face Chris Eubank Jr. in the World Boxing Super Series semi-final tomorrow night at the Manchester Arena. The WBA Super Middleweight title will be on the line on the clash, with Groves aiming to retain his title. Great Britain have won their first medal of the Winter Olympics this morning, as Dom Parsons won a dramatic bronze in the men's skeleton. Parsons won the medal on his final run, finishing just 0.11 seconds ahead of world champion Martin Ducours. Elsewhere on the 7th day of action in Pyeongchang, Team GB's men's curlers are currently in action against Sweden, while Laura Dees and defending champion Lizzie Arnold are both competing in the women's skeleton. This is your headlines. Over to Chris McMillan and Gregor Hines to discuss the appointment of Alex McLeish and more.
Thanks, Tom. So, Gregor, obviously this morning it's been made official. Alex McLeish has been appointed the Scotland manager for the second time. What's your initial reaction to that?
I think, my personal reaction, maybe for a lot of people the same reaction, is just kind of finally we have someone in the position. We've been looking to fill it since the end of the qualifying campaign for the World Cup. And it's just been constant, is it going to be O'Neill? That dragged on for months. Walter Smith turned it down. It's nice to finally have someone in charge ahead of our fixtures in April coming up.
Yeah, I think you're right as well. And you mentioned Smith turning it down reportedly. O'Neill definitely turned it down. We all know that. But then also, there's no chief executive in place. Would some maybe say that the SFA is in a bit of turmoil, do you think?
Well, the biggest thing there for me is that there's been questions about maybe McLeish's commitment to jobs in general, because he's been known to kind of just jump around from jobs. Yeah, especially with the turmoil here, where there's no chief executive. It's chief executive, plus the fact he's only been given till the end of this qualifying campaign. Almost screams like the SFA don't even know themselves if they want him there. They're willing to give him a chance, but they're not all the way in on this. But at the same time, it could maybe that he doesn't want to be committed too long to the Scotland job. Maybe he's doing this just to platform himself to go back down to England. You never know. He could do what he did last time.
Yeah, he could do. And, I still think he's got a point to prove. He's got a lot of fans to win over. And, he does have a very good win percentage as Scotland manager. He's got the best win percentage of any Scotland manager, permanent Scotland manager, who's been in charge of over 10 games since the 60s.
Yeah, but at the same time, he was taken over in a campaign where Walter Smith already put us in a position to qualify. He had already done quite a fantastic job, and McLeish there was taking over a team that was already built. This is now a position where there's a lot of questions around the squad, and he's now having to establish his style of play on the team.
But, do you not think there could be an argument that he would be a better candidate than someone like Michael O'Neill? McLeish has had, a certain level of success throughout his whole career that someone like O'Neill hasn't really had. He's had a brief, albeit fantastic stint with Northern Ireland, but, McLeish has won, trophies at Rangers, at Birmingham City in the Premier League, you know.
Yeah, one thing with McLeish is definitely you can't take away from Rangers or from Birmingham, especially the Birmingham job he did. Beating Arsenal League Cup, that was fantastic. Even the unbeaten run the back end of the season before to keep them up. But overall, it's just, when you look at many of his other managerial jobs, there's been a lot of questionable decisions made, a lack of commitment, almost like when he went to Belgium and only lasted a year, and he claimed he was getting his mojo back, then went to Egypt, didn't even last a year, and now he's the Scotland manager again. Yeah. There's just a few question marks on his commitment and maybe even his style of play when, he didn't even last in these countries where someone of his apparent calibre should be able to give a good go of it.
He was actually quoted as well before he took the Birmingham job that one of the things that put him off was there was such a long wait for a competitive fixture at Scotland. So, yeah, that would tie into the possible commitment issue as well.
But that's what puts a lot of managers off of international management, is this long-term kind of wait where you're only really managing a handful of fixtures a year. At the end of the day, when you choose to do that job, that's what you accept, and you accept the fact you're going to a lot of games to scout and to build the national team.
But it's interesting he's come in at this stage when he does have a long wait for his first competitive game. I mean, the first competitive game is not until the Nations League kicks off in, I think it's September. I mean, he's got a few friendlies, but...
Well, the friendlies are important for McLeish, especially, like I said before, he had a team built from then. This team, no one knows what's really going on with it. So for him, this is a chance to really build a squad of players that he likes and he wants to use.
And he can assess these players that have been coming into the squad. And do you think, how much, will he know about this, for example, this core group of Celtic players that has been a key part of the squad?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to know a lot about these Celtic players. I mean, they get a lot of TV time, a lot of media coverage. The big question for me isn't about the sort of bigger stars. It's more about the ones that people were calling for get a chance. You could argue some players were missed almost. Like, you could argue players like Tom Kearney have been completely passed over. He's got one cap for Scotland, but he's a Championship Player of the Year 2 years ago. He's still one of Fulham's top players now. There was rumours of him going to the Premier League for around 15 million in January.
It was David Moyes that was bidding for him, of course, at West Ham.
We're still talking about a player that has Premier League experience because he played with Hull in the Premier League. He has pedigree to him. He has an attacking style of play that Scotland almost lack, and yet he has one cap to his name. And that's the question of, he needs to maybe look not just at the core, but maybe look at the fringe players who haven't been given an opportunity yet.
Well, someone else like that, almost exact same description as Cal McGregor. You look at last night, he's the match winner for Celtic. He's never really got the chance under Strachan, but he's consistently proved himself at the highest level. I mean, he scored against Bayern Munich earlier in the campaign, and maybe someone like that, these fringe players, like you say, can get a bit of a better chance.
Well, that's what these next 4 friendlies need to be about giving. Because, I mean, we saw Malky Mackay give maybe some Aberdeen players a go and some Rangers players a go. But in general, it's not just them. It's all these players you see in the English Championship who are week in, week out putting these fantastic performances in, but aren't getting spoken about in any shape or form. I mean, I know Johnny Russell went there. He's been questionable. There was talks of him having a good chance with Derby there. But there's plenty of other players there that deserve a chance.
These are tough friendlies as well, though. I mean, we're talking Costa Rica, who had such a good time at the World Cup, Mexico away. These are not only the tough fixtures, do you think they're fixtures that friendlies that Scotland aren't really used to. We very rarely travel to a place like Mexico. They're going to be a tough.
Well, last time we did anytime we have done real travelling in recent years, I think the last major one was USA back in 2014, and we got beat, was it 4-1 or 5-1? I think the question is going to be, can the players handle doing that kind of travelling that they're not really used to? But overall, this is a good test to see if he's going to if he uses the same squad Strachan was using. These fixtures are going to be a complete waste of time for a lot of fans. Whereas if you're telling fans, there's going to be a chance of seeing Callum McGregor actually starting and playing well, Ryan Fraser consistently starting, who is starting for Bournemouth, who, let's remember, beat teams like Chelsea and so on in the past month.
He looks a bit of a live wire as well whenever he's playing, doesn't he?
Yeah, and for some reason, again, is coming off the bench instead of starting. But then we're starting players like Snodgrass, who, injury prone in recent years, isn't getting much game time at club level, and you're looking and you're thinking, surely we should be giving these younger, more exciting players a chance, and actually see if maybe we can play a different style of attacking football rather than this defensive football we've been playing recently. It's just clearly not got the job done.
Yeah, and you would maybe hope that he would maybe refrain from making this perceived mistakes that Strachan did at the start of last campaign, i.e. picking someone like Chris Martin ahead of Griffiths, Like, as soon as he changed those, we started playing a little bit better. But we need McLeish to hit the ground running, surely, don't we? Especially with the new Nations League coming as well. So.
For him, it's more about not hitting the ground running in terms of wins. It is about getting a selected squad and like knowing that you're going to pick on form, not on who's played well before in the shirt. That's always been a consistent problem for Scotland, is that when we have a problem in a position, rather than committing to giving someone else a chance, we'll give the old guard. Like, remember Alan Hutton wasn't getting a game at Tottenham, wasn't getting a game at Villa, didn't get a game at Nottingham, but was still getting played for Scotland. Not to think he played well for us, but at the same time, surely there were other right backs that we could have given a shot at this time to see if they could get the job done for us.
He'd actually been an interesting one as well, because he's a player that McLeish obviously knows very well, and he is playing for Villa, who are doing really well in the Championship as well.
Well, I mean, if he deserves the call up and he deserves to start, by all means pick him. But at that point, and that was the problem with many of these managers, whether it was Craig Levein or George Burley, or even you can argue
have their favourites, right?
They have the favourites, the ones that they stand by. But then that's where the fans started to get frustrated. You could see when they're seeing players like Chris Martin come on. I remember Slovenia game. Chris Martin comes on. He may have scored the winner, but everyone's booing that decision. Everyone's unhappy at the decision because it was a player that no one felt deserved to be there.
Okay, so for you, good appointment, yes or no?
Overall, I think it's a bad appointment. It looks more like a step back to more of a safer time. We should be looking for someone younger, maybe more exciting, and someone who can take this team forward.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris and Gregor. This has been the UWS Friday Sports Show. Thank you for watching.